know what you were going to say when you were like, oh, one more thing. I'm like, oh. I need 16 people right now.
That was amazing.
Yeah, that was awesome.
That was unhinged.
Should we cut that part?
No.
Please,
Please leave it
I
in.
love that.
Welcome everyone to the Idiot Brewing Company. Today I'm your host, July, currently imprisoned in the moon for my mono-red crimes against humanity. I'm joined by my co-host, the king of games, set to rival that of Yamayugi, TK.
What's up?
And of course, without further ado, we have our, not just for us, our producer for the Idiot Brewing Company, but as well, your Boil 2 champion, Jordan Drake.
Bye.
Woo! Let's go!
We have locked all the doors to make sure that we can interrogate Jordan to find out more about how your weekend went, talk about the deck list, all that kinds of stuff. And, well, I guess I want to go ahead and start off by saying, of course, congratulations.
Thank you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Appreciate it.
Here's your crown.
We are incredibly proud of you. I know you've heard us say that 1,000 times over the past however many days it's been now, but it doesn't make it any less true. But of course we have to talk about the journey getting there. So without further ado, I want to ask you about yourself, and more particularly about the deck lists, and specifically this list that you played in the Boil. So for those who don't know, Jordan has been playing. You've been playing CDH for how long now?
Let's see. CDH since November of last year, I think. So about a year, actually. I guess it's been, exactly a year.
Yeah, I guess. I wonder. We've lost the anniversary to the annals of time, but
Yeah, it was that weird Raleigh event, right? The single elimination charity event.
Yep.
And I took Toxrill.
You did take Toxrill.
Is that the one with the Chaos Orb that you guys
Yes!
That's
I don't want
crazy.
to talk about that. I want to talk about how my entire pod got to practice their Chaos Orb flip, but I didn't.
That's wild.
So, Chaos Orb flips were the tiebreaker for people who were at time in this particular charity event. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen.
That's nuts.
So goofy. But yeah, so you started on Toxrill. Where did you head from there?
Marnius was the second deck, which I ran for the longest time. Had some success with it. Got a couple top fours, few top 16s. And that was, I think, about as far as I ever went with it. I finished 39th at Cowtown. So top 40 at Cowtown was really close. I lost my win-it in to Andy, actually, funny enough. And then I switched over to Najila. I told myself I finally would run a meta deck. And Najila was actually not as meta as I expected it to be. But had some success with that as well. Top 4 to gold event. Won my first CDH event on Najila. And then from there it was Niv Mizzet, which I ran in our local league. I think I only ran it at one small event. And then I think from Niv, I guess it was TNT here, which I ran. I ran it at a small event in Asheville. Which is a city kind of close here to North Carolina, and then Lotus Bowl, top forward, and now obviously taking it to the Boil and doing well with that.
And so it's kind of obvious, I think, to say what got you on this path, at least in terms of the meta. But go ahead and tell me more about getting onto TNT.
Yeah, so I think it was you, right, TK? Like your list kind of inspired me because the more I looked at it, it was very close to what Marnius was already doing. Generating the infinite mana, filtering it through the commander, but it was way more efficient, right? I could actually tutor out most of the combo pieces. Whereas Marnius is like, I'm going to put Tithe down and I'm going to draw cards and I hope I get there.
I'm going to make manatees.
Yeah, so I think it basically was doing the same thing I already really liked with Marnius, but way more efficiently. Thrasios is completely busted commander, and looking at your list and how efficient the mana combos were and how successful you were, even when you were, because I know you built it for the unbannings. He put Fastbond in there, What else did you have in there?
What was it? Leovold.
Leovold.
We were talking about unbanning
yeah.
Leovold, and I was like, okay, we'll see how that works.
Yeah.
Like, when you played Leovold once in any game and he instantly
Oh
died.
yeah, it was like out of 50 games, I think I only cast Leovold once, and then immediately I got one card off of it, and he died, and I was like, okay, cool, that's gone. But Fastbomb was kind of sick though. I'm not gonna lie.
I think I Ghostfire sliced him.
Yeah, immediately I was like, okay, cool, we'll get a card for that.
So from there, it was it was very much. It's been TNT ever since, and really just tweaking the deck. And I think the first iteration wasn't anywhere near as clean. I had a lot of pet cards. I still had like Brina in there. Was still leading kind of into the Delny, Timna lines, and I found Thrasios was just a little bit more powerful when I was testing. So started taking stuff out, adding stuff in. Fell in love with the Otter lines, which I love Otters. Like if you ever look at my deck box, I have an Otter sticker on there. My playmat is an Otter. My wife's playmat is an Otter. So really, really enjoy the Otters. And so, like, if I could build an entire deck around how busted this one Otter is, yes, let's do it.
Yeah, 100%. And I love the changes that you made with your deck list specifically. I know we talked a lot about like our list being similar, but I think the tweaks that you made, as you can see, we're super efficient. Like you put me onto like the Hazel's Brewmaster line, which I'm sure you're going to talk about. Like it really runs like a oiled machine, and running it on the channel, it's been insane. So I think you did great work with like brewing. You're a genius at deck brewing, so it makes sense.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and when it was right around the same time that the bans hit, right? Like the actual real bans, not the fake gun bans.
Yeah.
I mean, TK, we talked about it on the channel that TNT was going to make a comeback.
Yeah, that was one of the like proposed things when we were making the video of like, oh, what is going to change for the meta. I was like, okay, with red gone, like TNT kind of comes back into a spotlight because it was the kind of de facto list prior to Dockside being printed, and then like Dockside happened, and then you had Underworld Breach, so there was like no point in not playing red. And that's kind of where the birth of like Blue Farm and all of these other decks came. And so a lot of people called me crazy because I was like, oh, TNT's coming back. And they're like, that's so copium. And I even named like my list. I was like, huff that copium. Because like TNT is coming back. And now it's like one of the best decks in the format, clearly. And so I think that's due to like the hard work that a lot of people on the deck like Jordan are doing. Makes sense. So.
Well, let's go ahead and I guess at that point kind of dip into TNT itself and your version of the list, which I want to start off with. I think arguably the two most important cards in the deck that both also timely came from Bloomborough. That being Valley Floodcaller and Hazel's Brewmaster.
Yep.
Obviously, you mentioned your love for the Otters. Tell me more about like getting onto both of those lines, like. We talked a little bit before about your discovery of Brewmaster. Now, that wasn't wholesale your original idea, was it?
No. I'm trying to remember what the original source was. I want to say it was like a Commander Herald article where I read like, oh, here's how busted Hazel's is. And they were talking about a completely different line. It was like a mono black line of some kind. Because initially I was looking at it for Marnius, because I was always trying to find ways to abuse tokens with Marnius, and this one it was like a 3-card infinite black combo, which 3-card combos are only just okay, but there was somebody else had said, oh well, this combo's with Devoted Druid, I think in the comment section, and so I was looking at it and I was like, oh, this sure does, and it was like, oh well, Survival's really busted here, someone else said somewhere. I don't remember where I found a lot of this, but one other person was like, oh, well, there's this really cool Neoform line. So that went in with the Ewit, Neoform the Devoted Druid into Ewit, and then Ewit back to Neoform then Ewit into the Hazels, exiling the Devoted Druid.
That's goofy.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't heard about that before.
It's nuts,
Yeah. So really, like, two very efficient lines just to immediately have it. You can also, funny enough, Eldritch Evolution your Devoted Druid into the Brewmaster.
Yeah.
So, it's really, really clean all the way around, and it's very hard to interact with once it ETBs, and if anyone misses that step, which he kind of saw in the top 4 game, right? Like the Magda player, I think he realized it after the fact, but once the food had entered, he had that Talon Gates in hand and realized he missed his interaction point because now the food untapping, I can do it forever. I will have infinite mana.
Yeah, which is such a goofy little thing. And it is an incredibly impressive combo. Yeah. I think that's very easy to say. And similarly enough, again, going back to the other Bloomberg card in question here, Valley Flood Caller. I mean, let's talk about that.
Yeah, it's a great card, right? Like it's one of those cards that you can build a whole deck around. Mm-hmm. As long as you have access to green and you can consistently get it online, I think it's just very, very powerful. The synergy it has with Birds of Paradise and Mockingbird, I think cloning your a Mana Dork with your Mockingbird is incredibly viable. Incredibly so. Like I played one game online where I did it to my Bloom Tender.
That's really
yeah,
clever.
And it's just that's a ton of mana you're just abusing because I can continuously do this. Funny enough, it also lets you save your bop from Bowmaster because they gotta aim at it and you just I'll flash in this. Now he's a 1/2.
Yeah, that's pretty sick.
So I think he's a really good card. I've been looking for other decks that really abuse them. Like I think Glarb is really, really powerful and well positioned. Mm-hmm. I was a little surprised Glarb didn't do as well at this event.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Another power card, right? Glarb.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I expected to see more Glarb, or I don't even want to say I expected to see more Glarb because I think we saw a few lists there.
Yeah.
But I was shocked that it did not show up in the higher seats.
Yeah, I think the highest ranked one was 68th or something like that. Like it did pick up a couple wins, but just didn't get there. By the time it was over.
Yeah, I think its place in the meta probably is a little less defined as like Valley Flood Caller. Like immediately when that card was revealed, everybody was like, "Oh, this is gonna be great in Rockside. This is gonna be great in like all of these decks." I don't think Glarb place has been really figured out yet, but I'm sure somebody's working at it right now and cracking it.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone saw Valley Flood Caller and was like, "That is a phenomenal combo. That is a phenomenal value piece." Yeah. And then, within a week, someone figured out the retraction helix thing.
Yeah.
I know you were the first one to bring it to me.
Yeah, and I wasn't the first one to even discover it. I think I found it through. I don't know, something on the deck list database. There was one of the Brewers Corners lists, and they had it, and I was like, that's kind of hot. What? Yeah, so.
And I stole it from TK, so.
You stole his list, you stole his strategy.
Well, I think his list was very different. I think the initial one that he built ended up being 25 or 30 cards different than the one I ended up taking to the boil. But I think, my initial love for the list definitely stemmed from looking at his and goldfishing it and realizing, oh, hey, this is already what I like to do. But, you're on Freed from the Real lines.
Yeah. We're doing, some extra stuff with, Bloom Tender and stuff like that, chain stasis lines and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more, I would say, it's different for sure. I think I love the changes that you did, though. They, I think, are way more, as I'm not really playing too much tournament CDH anymore, and so I think yours is way better prepared for the meta, and I think it worked out phenomenally. So
well, and I think as well on top of that, one of the things because I was looking at your list again before we properly sat down, was just kind of examining it, and when I first was looking at it, I just wanted to call it non-red good stuff, right? It just seems like at first glance it seems like a fairly standard TNT pile of good stuff.
Yeah.
But when I started digging into it, especially after you mentioned the Neoform line, your list has a lot of clear lines and clear synergies that I don't think, and I did not get the chance to look at a lot of other TNT lists at the boil, so I can't say with 100% certainty of this, but I feel like your version of the list had very clear and defined past the victory that everything looks disparate and everything looks separate, but it all comes together in a really unique way that I'm really impressed with the way you put it together.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, the whole idea is to create overlapping synergies so that if you do lose a piece somewhere, you still can kind of quickly pivot to something else. And what I really like about the deck is it is very flexible in terms of how it can approach the meta, and then how it ultimately can kind of steal games just by the ability to kind of move on the fly to adapt to any situation that's kind of thrown in front of you. Whereas decks I've run in the past just haven't had that flexibility. You know, you're kind of locked in with, like with Marnies, for example, you're really locked into the Tithe strategy, because if you can't get that online, you start to really struggle, because a lot of the token generators just aren't good enough to keep up with the value that other decks are producing. Whereas TNT, it was just, okay, well, you stop this combo, let's move into this one. And all the cards by themselves do something else besides I win the game, or, you know, hey, I'm going to sit in your hand, other than Thoracle, right? Thoracle's the one dead card in the library.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is really impressive, because I know like a lot of TNT lists, just in general, and a lot of, you know, blue-green lists like to play Hullbreaker Horror, which I noted that you were not on, especially this weekend. Do you, this might be a weird question, but do you think that Valley Floodcaller is, at least for your list, and at least for TNT, a better version of Hullbreaker Horror?
I think anything with green, right? Because it's all about also abusing the bird's ability. So I think when you have that, it does become better, because you're already running the Valley Flood Caller for the synergies. You only need 1 mana rock versus 2, which I think is really key right now, because Crypt and Lotus were 2 rocks that you had before with Hullbreaker that helped, you know, make that mana positive interaction point. Now you have significantly less amount of those, so it becomes a little bit tougher to have the 2 rocks online and be able to bounce them back and forth, you know, especially if you're trying to do things at instant speed. And I think, you know, as everyone kind of saw, instant speed does matter right now. Being able to flash stuff in is kind of king when you're trying to do these really complicated stack battles, and you have these games that are really grindy and long, and people have set up these massive boards. Well, how do you beat these massive boards? You kind of wait for them to make a mistake and devote too many resources to defending something, or overextending themselves somewhere, and then taking advantage of that overextension.
Yeah. I mean, that seems to be how a lot of decks are winning right now. Even decks that you wouldn't expect to be coming in and doing that. Like, it's just like, okay, here's my over-the-top slam dunk.
Well, it's what made certain decks king for a long time, right? Like, Rockslide was really good because it would either beat you by, you know, getting to the window before you could slam it shut really early, or it would just develop value, and then, oh, here I am right on top of everything you're doing because I'm ad nauseing. Magda, Sisay, right? Both of them able to develop at instant speed and slam the door on you while you're attempting to do your own thing. They're like, okay, well, you're going for the win. Here I am. Kitten, same thing, right? If it hits the hits whatever big creature off of its flips, now you're having to respond to that versus trying to win the game.
Yeah, 100%. And so, with all that in mind, I mean, before we get into the boil, I want to ask more about your prep with the list.
Yep.
So, like, obviously, you mentioned you went to Lotus Bowl with this.
Yes.
Congrats on the top 4 on that one as well.
Thank you.
And so, like, what was your, obviously, practice is everything, right? But tell me more about your process in prepping with the list, getting more comfortable with it, all that kind of stuff.
Well, again, I think it was like I goldfish yours a lot. I also liked watching TK play the list that I ended up building on the streams, because then I got an idea of like, okay, well, how would someone else approach kind of the same strategies that I would? Do they sing the list a little differently than I am? And I think you were at times, right? Like you were kind of seeing some different lines that I hadn't quite seen, and that kind of helped me identify some areas that I wanted to tweak a little bit, or it was like, okay, that's really cool strategy that I can build upon.
Yeah.
You know, taking it to Lotus Bowl was huge because then it let me kind of test it against really good competition. There's a lot of really, really strong players in Georgia, and to kind of test that list against a lot of those really good players I've never played with before, also really helped me kind of get an idea of like, okay, this is what the list is doing really, really well, and what it's maybe not doing so well. I also jam a lot of games online, played a lot with Corbin and Jacob, who run the Breach Boys Discord, so did a lot of games with them. Go to my local, LGS every Tuesday and Friday and jam games there, and really it was just kind of everyone in the community that I would practice with kind of helped me along in this route.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the best parts about this community, right? Is that like even though it is a very competitive scene, it's all in the development of making better players.
Yeah, everybody's out there trying to help other people, even when they're trying to also whoop other people as well.
Yeah. I mean, and I got coaching during my journey, not so much recently, but like I did coaching with Ian, a comedian, when I was still trying to get Marnius working. I did coaching with Wounded Satellite, and was really instrumental in kind of helping me get off of certain decks and into other decks. So,
Rest in peace, Tox Rule.
So, there were definitely other people along the way who kind of helped push there. But for a lot of it, it was just a lot of grinding games, a lot of practicing, a lot of late nights where, I'd get off work and I'm still in school, as well, working on my second degree. So it was like work, then school. I have a kid, so time with her, and then I'd be late at night and I'd be like, okay, well, I still want to get a game in so I can at least get a practice session in for the day. So, there were some late nights and some dedicated, time to that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly paid off. I mean, kind of to show where you've come from. What was your record for the Boyle 1?
Oh, I think I just looked. It was either 033 or it was 032 drop. Either way, it was drop, right? I didn't even play round 7. I know that for a fact, but it was not good. I did not win a single game. I drew a ton and I lost a ton.
Well, of course, I mean, that all leads up to the event itself. And, I mean, we're going to kind of just go from the beginning. So, obviously 7 rounds. I heard you have an incredibly, incredibly difficult first round. So like we don't have to talk too much about how troublesome that one was, but for the rest of the Swiss rounds, like how did it feel? How were your matchups? Were there any notable games? How were you feeling overall about it?
Yeah, the first, obviously round 1, I got a weird buy, not buy thing that, did put me in 1-0 to start the day. But from there, I dropped the first 2. Was feeling a little down about it because I felt like it wasn't anything that the deck did wrong. It was all misplays on my part. I really fumbled away game 2. And game 3 just kind of got out of hand. Even though I was in a position to do something about it, I just kept, was brain fogging it up. And maybe I was just still a little tired from the drive up because we'd driven up pretty late the night before because I had to work. So, I think it was round 4 where I started to turn things around, was feeling a little bit better. Got some food in me, and then round 4 was able to pull out a big win. Round 5 was able to pull out a big win, and then round 5 was the kind of the craziest one because it was a double crick pod. So going into that, it was really, really scary because we didn't sure how the cricks were going to develop. But the blue farm player grabbed an early swords, which kind of paralyzed both crick players who were in seat 2 and 4. And it let me kind of freely develop in seat 3 and kind of steal that game away while Blue Farm was stuck trying to hold up mana to defend it. And the first time they did not hold up mana to defend, with their swords and said, hey, Blue TNT, it's your problem now. I slammed Kid and Basalt on them. And, you just got away with it there. I saw the window and realized like, okay, well, you're going to waste time developing and say it's on you now to defend. Then you're not playing defense, and what are 2 cricks really going to do at that moment? So, was able to kind of shut the door there and pull out a big win in a pod that I really did not think I was going to be able to do very well in. But I think the biggest round really wasn't even any of the Swiss rounds. Like, round 7 was kind of funny just because I got the entire pod to basically show me their hand.
I remember that because, and I think I've mentioned this to you before, because you, go ahead and tell that story real quick from your end.
Yeah, so just the way it developed, there was a Rockside player in seat 4 who developed really quickly, Gemstone Cavern, and it forced everyone to kind of be in a position of playing defense against the Rockside. On the Rockside player's turn, managed to convince him not to send it, and then from there was talking to the table, and really the way I was able to talk to the Rockside player made it he inadvertently revealed he had no interaction. Talking to the other 2 players, was able to basically figure out like, okay, well, if Rockside's got no interaction, then we need to know, okay, well, what happens if there's a backup win here, if there's something else that's going on. Everyone kind of revealed their interaction to deal with the Rockside player, which really wasn't anything that was notable. The Enris Gloomstalker Street Urchin deck had something, but then he tapped his mana out because he thought I was going to be the one dealing with the issue. And then I was like, okay, well, if everyone's tapped out and I know Roxy has no interaction, then I'm just going to slam home my win here because I had a Worldly Tutor in hand, and the card I showed everyone was the Tainted Pact. So it was funny, right? Because I kept saying, well, what do you guys have for Thoracle? And they kept saying, oh, well, we have nothing. Like, there's no defense here. And I was like, all right, cool. Well, if you're going to tell me that.
Awesome. Well, and the best part is when you say revealed, I think it's important to note, they didn't reveal their hands. They showed you their hands, which was even funnier because, as I was saying before, from my perspective, so I was outside for a moment, and I was coming back in after your game. Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I was outside. I think I was talking to some folks or taking a quick smoke break, and then I came back in. I think it was right just as your game had finished. I didn't know how your game had gone yet, but I walked by and I heard someone that I later learned was from your pod, and they were just like, yeah, I don't know, man. The guy just managed to convince everyone to show us his hand, or show him their other hands, and then he just won, and I was like, oh, that's really funny. And then I got back to you, and the first thing out of your mouth was, yeah, I managed to convince them all to show me their hands. And I was like, oh. It was that, because we play a lot together, and so I've seen the way you politic. I've seen the way you get your greedy little hands into the minds of those CDH players. And it is that game right there definitely was an emblem of your politicking. I will say that.
I mean, right, when you politic, it's you're saying stuff that makes sense. And in the moment, the Rockside player had a definitive win. That was known to the table. And I think everyone properly assessed that the Rockside player was the primary threat. Had he sent it on turn 1, he won. Like, no one had anything for him. Even the Tainted Pact I had, because I had kind of told, like, I kind of, to the Rockside player, I was like, okay, well, I have interaction. And it wasn't even castable interaction, but that made him hesitate just enough to go, okay, well, I'm not going to send it then. Mm-hmm. And so, I think that was just like one of those things where, okay, because we did know the Rockside player had definitive win, we had to defend it, and it was just a really kind of unique opportunity because it's not, normally I'm not in a position to win that quickly. Mm-hmm. Turn 2 with that kind of mana base that I had, because all I had was 2 lands, and I turned 1 to Lothode.
Oh, Jesus.
So I got kind of lucky that everyone kind of fed the Lothode back around, and I had just enough mana to Worldly Tutor on my upkeep, mm-hmm. and then, slam it home. Because initially going into my turn, I was still having discussions with people, so I wasn't necessarily like looking to slam it. It was just like, okay, when the Endless player tapped his mana that specific way, I was like, oh, okay, well, if you're going to tap your mana like that, then you just opened my window to try and see what I can do here.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes that's just how it ends up, right?
Yeah.
And of course that means we go into the top 16 with an event, or with a record like that. Which I want to go ahead and quickly shout out that you were not the only Drake that ended up in the top 16. I want to wish congratulations to your wife, our fellow friend of the group, Lily, for her performance in the top 16, or at least getting to the top 16, and the performance as well. But yeah, so top 16. Tell me the pod. Where are you in? You were in seat 1.
Yep. I was top seed for that pod. I was number 3 overall, going into top 16. And yeah, I mean, just the way the game developed, I think I developed well, but everyone else developed crazy. And I think that was kind of the difference. But the whole game really was kind of unfolding the way I wanted it to, because I'd been holding win in hand for a long time. Mm-hmm. I was sitting on the cord, and I was sitting on the Valley Flood, I was sitting on the cord, the Meme Bet, and the Retraction Helix for a long time. Since I had the early birds, I was like, okay, I'm good now to kind of abuse this whenever I need to, and I just have to be patient and wait. To the point where I was even skipping Thrasios activations to just see. Yeah, because if it was like, oh, I'm going to activate Thrasios, well, then I tap out some of my mana that I'm going to need to use it if anyone tries to do anything crazy in my end step. And that did actually happen, because I did win, funny enough, in my own end step. Because they attempted to, that's where all the honors got flashed in. That's where the 20 card stack battle actually happened, was in my own end step while I was trying to pass turn. So, And I kind of, like I said, I kind of had it unfold that way for myself because I knew the Rock Thrash player was trying to set their win up. The Blue Farm player had shown me the Wheel of Fortune in their hand from the very beginning of the game. So they also had Waste Knot out. So it was, wheeling into a Waste Knot was going to be crazy value for them.
Which, Waste Knot, if you want to run down what that is for the folks that might not know that card, because that is a very not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Waste Knot is for every card that your opponents discard, if it's a creature card, they make a 4/4 or 2/2 zombie. I can't remember, but it's a zombie token. If it is a land card, you make 2 black mana. And if it is a non-land, non-creature card, then you get to draw a card. So, in a Wheel of Fortune, especially with the Rock Thrash player, had like 25 cards in his hand off of his Ristic and Mystic. It was one of those situations where it was like he had so many cards. The value that Rockside ends up with is probably not going to allow us to finish that game in a way that goes in our favor. Whether any of the 3 of us that were playing in that game, the Rocco player was pretty much out of that game for a while, and kind of felt bad for him because he was sitting there for most of that stack battle, just kind of watching it unfold. Going into I think he was this close because he had Grand Abolisher down. And I'm moving to end step, and he's like, "All right, I'm good. I've got what's the Planeswalker, the Birthing Pod Planeswalker?
Oh, Vivian.
Vivian.
Yeah.
So he had Vivian out, and so I think he was like, okay, if it gets to my turn, I just win here. And then on end step is when all the nonsense began.
Unfortunately.
And I hate to be that player, right? You're like, all right, I'm ready. It's gonna be my turn, and then everything hits the fan.
It's like, no.
It's like, no, come back.
Yeah.
And I finally went back and watched portions of that game that were recorded, and even the announcers never saw me as a threat in that game, which is exactly where I wanted to be. I didn't want anyone really looking at me. I wanted their stack battle to develop, and even as I'm showing the Rockside player cards in my hand, it was more like, oh well, here, like if it gets to it, I can help. And so that's kind of how I was able to be like, okay, well, I can cord and meme bet, and then maybe we see where we're at, if it comes to that. But I kind of want to see the stack unfold first. And so that's how really we got all the counter spells on the stack. And then it was like, okay, how much more counter magic can feasibly be in their decks, especially when they're out of mana. The Valley Flood Callers did complicate it a little bit because them flashing rocks in was not a very fun experience for me because then I had to start flashing stuff in. And anyone, like, the game is streamed, so you can watch it. It was very intense, and there was one moment where I put my head down because I thought I'd bungled it. Remembered I had the Mox Diamond in hand and flashed it out to keep the loop going, but probably the craziest game I've ever been a part of, probably the most complicated stack I've ever been a part of. I think even when I won, most of that stack did not resolve down. So I think it was like 28 cards deep or some crazy number like that. That did not resolve. The storm count was insane.
Jesus. Yeah, I mean, because I know I've heard you tell this story, like, obviously when we were hanging out after the fact, but I mean, as you said, there was that moment of defeat, right?
Yeah.
In your mind. I mean, how do you handle that?
Yeah, so it's a trick that I've been taught before, and really it was Wounded Satellite who kind of told me about it because I had bungled away top 4 at one of the events in Raleigh. It was like for a lot of cash. It was one of the 15K. I was basically in my winning in round and got too excited. I was on Najila. I had hit with Samet, had the Mystical Tutor in hand, and I was under Grand Abolisher, so all I needed to do was Mystical Tutor for Intuition, and I was golden. At that point, I had everything else I needed to win the game. And I had the Savine's Wreck in hand, gobbles of mana, like I was golden. All I needed to do was Intuition, the 3 breach pieces, did not matter what they gave me. I was winning that game. Got too excited, forgot to play my Mystical Tutor, so I drew all the cards instead. Did not draw anything I needed. Had to pass and promptly lost that game. Was heartbroken coming out of that. And that was actually the second game of that tournament I had bungled away because there was another one that I had also just messed up the Underworld breach line, which wasn't something I wasn't used to breach lines. It was still, Nigio was still relatively new. Obviously, I've been on Marnius for the longest time, so breach lines were still relatively new. And to do it twice like that was very frustrating. And Max and I had a long talk after that tournament about, just stepping back from those moments and taking a nice deep breath. Like once you've got win, you're about to go for win, it's resolved. You don't have to really stress anymore about like, okay, well, what happens now? What happens now. You've practiced these lines. Just take that deep breath, play it out the way you've played it out 100 times while you're goldfishing it, and bring it home. And so, same thing in this situation. Put my head down, took that deep breath and said, I know how to win this game. I've done this. I've practiced these moments. I know why, this is why I was flashing in, because the otter is abusable with the birds. So now let's just start abusing it the way that I've practiced. So, in that moment, his advice was really, really good for me.
Yeah. And, you never know when the game's not over until it's over, right?
Yeah.
And of course that means, taking that breath and stopping for a moment earns you that top 4 slot.
Yeah. Well, I've done it ever since that rally tournament. And that rally tournament was months and months and months ago. And I've done it literally ever since. Like every time I now resolve a win, or like if the win like resolves and I just need to start going through loops, I just take that deep breath and go, okay, let's do this cleanly so that I don't, bungle the win up somehow some other way. So whether that was Najila, Marnius, Niv Mizzet, or TNT here, I think it's just really good advice. If you're ever in a situation where you have the win, it's okay to take a second and just make sure you're calm and collected when you're going for it and you're not flustered. Take a second to step back from, crowds sometimes gather and people are watching, and, something like a top 16 or a top 4, not only are a lot of people watching, but, you've got tens of thousands of people online who are also watching. And you just take a step back away from those moments, let some peace come on you, and you go, okay, let's finish the job.
But yeah, that was your top 16 game. And before we get really into the top 4, I imagine, TK, you're similarly curious as I am how you're feeling going into the top 4.
Yeah, especially like knowing kind of how you are as both a person and a player. I imagine it was probably really nerve-wracking going into finals, especially with like some of the players you were with. I know Varrick's like Kevin, he was in there, and he's like a very accomplished player as well. So that must have been pretty crazy.
Not as crazy as you'd think, right? Because I think it was still a little surreal that I'd won the last round, and the stack had been so big and there had been so much craziness on that by the time I finished it, I think it was more just relief.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I also started cramping real bad, so Ian went and got me, our buddy Ian, not comedian, he went and got me some water and a snack so that I was like, I actually had something finally.
I remember that too, because Ian was like, yeah, we got to get him some water. But they had just closed down the venue. And so I'm like, water from where? Like, dude's just going to have to go thirsty. But no, he was able to get something. So that was good.
Yeah. So, and then from there, it was just cheering on Lily, right? Like, I was really hoping that'd be super cool. The two of us get to top 4 the boil together. And, at one point in the game, it looked like she was pretty close to being able to pull it out. But, like you said, Kevin's really, really accomplished player and was able to win that one. And I'll be honest, like I've played with Kevin before, and we had a really good game. And I played with Andy before. Funny enough, he actually knocked me out of Cowtown.
Yeah,
he knocked me out of our winning in.
Oh, so this was revenge.
Yeah, redemption. Really,
yeah,
right?
Redemption. Yeah.
So. I don't know. By the time his game ended, I don't think I really even had time to process it fully. It was just like, oh, okay, another game of Magic.
Yeah.
And it took me probably a day or two, even after the boil, to be like, oh yeah, like holy shit, bro, you won the boil.
Yeah.
Like, wow, okay,
crazy, yeah. I remember like driving back home and getting a text like, oh yeah, Jordan got it. And I was like, no way. I think we were leaving McDonald's. I had like a handful of fries.
I can picture that.
Yeah, no, it was
like literally phone in hand, halfway bitten in.
Yeah, because they were making us leave the venue, and we didn't stay like in the same
Right.
place. So it was like, okay, cool. I guess we'll head down and we'll just watch it online. Oh my god, it's crazy. But yeah, no, I imagine there was probably a sign of relief, and then definitely shout out to fellow idiot like Lily, because that top 16 pod was insane. It was Kevin as well as John, who was really big on Eska as well. Which,
yeah.
Yeah.
What a goofy list.
Yeah. Well, I played against him in the first boil on Eska, and I remember being terrified because I was like, what is this deck? What is happening? It turns out it's just like no bad cards, and like you cast your commander either on the front side and have mana dorks for days, or you cast it on the back side and just get pieces for free. And so I was like, oh yeah. And so yeah.
It's crazy, right? Like in a format where you've lost two of the biggest pieces of mana that a lot of decks use to reliably get online, having a commander that just everything's a dork now.
Yeah,
that's
pretty good.
It's not too bad.
Yeah. But okay. With that in mind, then now knowing that you were kind of more relief, tell us a little bit about the top 4 game.
Yeah, weird. The top 4 game really developed weirdly for me because my initial opening hand was decent. I wouldn't say it was great, but it was good enough to where I was like, okay, in seat 2, with the way Magda's are and the way the other TNT is, I think I can take maybe a hand that isn't quite as bad, but I don't want to mull too low and put myself out of the game, which unfortunately Andy had to do.
Yeah.
And so, Kinnan usually doesn't go super, super fast. I didn't know Kevin's list at the time, so I didn't know how fast it would develop, but generally what I've seen, it's pretty rare for Kinnan to develop super quickly.
Yeah.
So I felt comfortable with my hand. Even going into, out of his turn where he developed really fast.
Yeah.
I was still okay. Then he made himself table enemy, and that helps kind of take some of the heat off of me. Andy was already kind of out of it, so at that point it's just me, Magda, kind of against him, and then and then Andy grabbing stuff that he can to help here and there, like the silence was really key. And I think ultimately, right, the kind of the weird crux of that game was for Andy to cast that silence. He wanted to know that I wasn't just going to win right there. Yeah. And hilariously enough, in my hand is Thoracle Consult and a Swan Song. Or I didn't have the Swan Song yet. I think I drew it for turn. But on my turn, I would have a protected win. And so he was like, well, I need you to show me your hand. And I'm sitting there looking at all this like, bro, I don't know that I can do that.
I'm not doing that.
But I'm also like, okay, if we don't do that, we probably just lose here to Kinnan. So
that silence, yeah.
And I know Andy's probably out, and Magda's going to take a little bit more time because they developed a little slower. Mm-hmm. They only have the one treasure and no real way to abuse the doors too much. Yeah. And Kinnan had developed such a big board. They were running out of swing targets for the most part. So, yeah, the hope was that I could get another round and see kind of where we were at. But clearly everyone's low on interaction if that's the desperation plays that we're making here. Yeah. So, show the Thoracle Consult. We agree I won't go for it on my turn. And they were just kind of like, well, we just have to hope that you're a man of your word, basically. Which, spoiler alert, I was the man of my word. But, on his turn, he did slam the Basalt home. We'd seen the Basalt, so we knew it was coming because he revealed it off his Thasius activation. Yeah. And he went to silence, got countered, and we were like, okay, well, I think we're cooked here. Yeah. And Magnus like, well, I might have something. And we were like, okay, well, what might you have? And he showed it to Andy. He did not show it to me. And I was like, okay, so I'm curious, because as soon as Basalt hits, we just lose this game. Because he had an extra untap too. So it was, okay, tap. Okay, well, I'll just pay and untap it again. And we're right back to square one. So I was like, I don't really know what he's got that's going to do anything. And then Siege Smash from the top rope. I was like, what is this? This 20-cent common from Modern.
It's new Ashling tech, baby. That's what it is.
That's crazy.
So I thought they'd stop printing split-second cards, but apparently not.
That's insane. I think that's one of my favorite things about getting to these high elo tables and stuff like that. You see some ingenuity and some creativity that you will never see anywhere else.
No. Well, I mean, what other deck is running it besides Magda, right?
Right.
Mono red decks probably exclusively run it. Yeah, mono red deck.
yeah. Makes sense. Yeah, that's insane.
Well, it's now running it because now I saw that play and I was like, oh. I picked it up on my way back from Georgia.
That's so funny.
So that play happened. Did not go for it on my turn, but then Magda grabbed God Pharaohs to ensure that I could not do it on the next go around, and I was like, oh no, here we go. So from there, it just got kind of weird, and I was really just looking for a window to kind of slam home things. I had the survival of the fittest from like turn 2 online, and was just like, okay, well, I can kind of chill and go for the hazels when I'm ready. And the opportunity never really presented itself until like I main phased it to set it up and quickly try to distract the table with my bowmaster. And I think from there it was just like, I'm gonna sit on this and hope people forget about the devoted druid and I get to my turn and no one still has anything. And I'm pretty sure at this point no one at the table really had much. When Kevin went to tap, that was where the key was going to be, is how Kevin tapped on his turn, because he had the Hullbreaker Horror. Mm-hmm. So he's going to be able to bounce anything, but he wasn't, he couldn't win through it because of the Dampening Sphere and the God Pharaohs.
Taxing.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, right? Yeah. Like, Hullbreaker loops aren't going to do anything at that point.
Yeah.
So it was going to be weird to see how he tapped, and he tapped pure value. Pure agreed, thankfully, to the point where I think he had 2 mana up, and I was like, all right, what is 2 mana, I think it was 2 mana. I was like, what 2 mana spell is he going to be able to cast here that matters? Like, because he's only got 2 mana and he's going to need 4. Is there a 0 drop that he could have cast for free at flash speed with no Valley Flood Caller? I don't think so. So, thought that was the best window I was going to see the rest of that game.
Yeah.
And, slammed home the Devoted Druid, or the Hazels, and yeah. The rest is history.
Crazy.
And thankfully, Magda did not realize the interaction point for his Talon Gates that he was holding in his hand, because that would have ruined my whole day.
Sick.
And I remember, because did you watch the stream, TK? Were you watching it when it was going?
I was able to catch a little bit, but not much. We were trying to focus on getting out of Atlanta alive.
Very difficult task.
Yeah, traffic is insane.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, because the folks that were staying at the same place you were, it was like, I think the remainder of us was like 4 or 5 of us back at the hotel.
Yeah.
We were watching it, and I think we had the same thought that a lot of folks online had when we were watching the stream, which is, why didn't you on Kinnon's end step do the survival of the fittest for the Hazels? And it was when you didn't do that and you untapped, it clicked in my mind. I was like, he's already got it. He doesn't need it. He doesn't need to do no survival.
Yeah, and I was trying to obfuscate the fact that I had it. Like, I think I'd shown it to Andy earlier in the game because I had it almost from the jump. Every card I drew that game was gas. Like, all gas, no breaks, is what my wife told me after the fact. And so, like, I showed it to him early in that game, and I think he either forgot, or maybe I think the other thing I wonder is if he was just, like, he was so out of it, like, why did he care anymore who won that game? And he wasn't going to, like, what is helping the table do for him at that point other than give someone else a win? So, I don't know. And obviously we were tired. We'd been playing Magic for
20 hours.
Yeah, 20 hours. It was late at night. We were already all tired, long days and exhausting games. And, sometimes at those end of the night tables get a little messier than the play you would have been doing in Swiss, just because you're so tired and you're stressed and you're under a microscope and you're just trying to make it all happen. So
yeah. It was a phenomenal game to watch. I hope it was a phenomenal game to play.
Phenomenal game to win.
Not in the moment it wasn't. The Dampening Sphere and the God Pharaohs, I was like, I don't know how to play around both of them. Like, I can't counter anything that I do, but everyone can hold up mana to try and stop the other person. I thought we were going to be sitting in that game until Magda just decided to close the door on us, right? Because how can you interact with that in a way that makes any sense? 5 mana to cast my counter spell it's not going to do anything in a stack war.
No,
so.
Especially with a deck that doesn't even really use the stack much. Once it gets to 5 treasures, it's like, okay, well.
Yeah. And we talked after the game. He had, like, he had a win attempt to go for it, and I'm sure Kevin was probably close to. I mean, obviously with Hullbreaker Horror, like all you needed to do was bounce them.
Get rid of it.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, because the Magna player had one of his little changeling artifact.
Yeah, he had already had the artifact. Yeah, he had the bark form harvester.
Yeah, that's what it was. But yeah. Well, and then of course, you're the winner. We did it. Chicken dinner.
Yeah.
And so like, kind of like almost like a biopsy for the boil. I kind of want to look to the future. I imagine you're sticking on TNT.
Yep. Yeah. It's a deck I've really loved. I think it plays exactly to my style. But you know, thankfully now that I have the invitational invite secured, I can be a little bit more selective in terms of the events I go to. Like I don't. Before Lily and I were planning on grinding every single event we could hit. Now, I guess she still needs to grind pretty hard, but I can be a little bit more selective to the events that I want to go to, and I can be a little goofier now with some of the decks I take. Like I can try maybe some off meta stuff again, and don't have to worry too much about it. Though I don't want to stop playing TNT too much because I do want to keep being comfortable with it, and I want to see how the meta adjusts to TNT because I think that's going to be key as well. I already saw a lot of people talking about some of the tech they're going to start slotting in just to deal with TNTs. Yeah. And I'll be curious to see, how that unfolds and what that looks like and how the deck will need to then adapt to respond.
Of course, yeah.
I'm getting this guy on rock side. Finally, it's happening.
You got a hard skin.
You don't have an excuse anymore.
I don't think rock side's that well positioned anymore.
No, it's not. But I mean, hey, I play Yu-Gi-Oh now. It doesn't matter.
We're gonna get you back.
Dude, 2025 is the year of the TK.
Is it?
We talked about this. All the universes beyond.
Oh yeah. Magic is printing a lot of stuff for me.
Yeah,
this is true.
I think I remember Gavin Verhey and Mark Rosewater and Richard Garfield all calling you and saying this is your year.
Don't you love Final Fantasy? I'm like, yeah, dude. I'm a huge weeb.
We're gonna print you Spider-Man.
Oh my god. With that being said, though, is there any advice that you have for anybody who's trying to still grind out their, invite with you?
Yeah, I think, the best advice is just try not to get too discouraged. Like, sometimes the results don't come right away. Starting out was rough for me. I did not start off doing well, right? Like I said, the first 2 tournaments I went to, did not win a single game. And I think it wasn't until the 3rd or 4th tournament that I finally had some success. And, from there was able to kind of grow into the player I am now. But I think, just try not to get too discouraged. Brew your own decks. I feel like that's one thing a lot of people don't do. They do like to net deck. And I think there's some value to seeing what the net is doing. But you have to put your own spin on things. And I think that a lot of times that's why some players don't have as much success as maybe they would otherwise have, is they've taken a deck that someone has done really well on, but that's their deck. That's what they've done well. How do you play the game? How you approach the game? I think those are all things that you have to evaluate when you pick a deck for yourself. And I think that sometimes, when you're saying, well, I have such a great deck, how am I not doing well? Maybe it's because the deck is just not right fit for you. And so maybe there just needs to be some adjustments that happen there. But I think that's really the 2 biggest pieces, right? Is just keep grinding, keep practicing, read a lot, right? Like always study what the meta is doing because that can kind of determine how you approach things and the deck changes that you need to make because, you can't always just run the same deck that feels good in one place and it do well somewhere else. Sometimes you do have to adjust to what's going on. A good example, right? Georgia has kind of a funky meta compared to like California where they go, they're pretty rock side pilled over there. So, if you were to fly out west, you'd have to adapt to a faster format.
Yeah. No, I love that advice. I think I live and die by that. You definitely brew your own stuff. I used to be heavy when I was into tournaments and stuff like that on net decking. And I realized I'm like, this deck doesn't feel good. It's because that's just not me. Like how, this deck works for Wounded or Ian or Jordan, you know what I mean? It's not going to work for a TK because I'm not those people. And that's the same with anybody else. Like, your play style is unique to you. So figure out what works for you.
Yeah.
I live and die by that. So I love that.
I think net decks are just a great starting point, right?
Yeah.
Like you see what's been successful, and then you just make the changes that feel comfortable for you, and that's how you develop your personal style and get the deck that ultimately works the best for you.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why I play bad decks. But yeah, I mean, that kind of similar to what TK said. It falls perfectly in line for the most patient player I've ever seen to offer that advice. But it is absolutely sound, yeah. Yeah, and I think, unless you got any final thoughts or questions for the man.
No, man, I'm just super proud of you. As both like one of your best friends and a content creator with you, it's been incredible to see kind of your journey in all of this. And I've seen the work that you've put in to grind. So I'm just really happy that it worked out for you.
I appreciate that.
And I'm sure this will not be the last time that we're doing this.
I certainly hope not, because that would be kind of sad if this might be.
And it's all down. It's just no. I mean, we don't know what the future of tournament CEDH looks like, but at least as of recording this video, we can name you the last Boyle champion of CEDH.
One of two, maybe.
You're in a club of two. You should. We gotta find out who the other one is.
Ian.
Is it Ian?
Yeah,
it is.
Ian loves me.
Yeah, we gotta do a Boyle video where it's Ian versus Jordan.
Oh God, I get cooked.
We'll call him up. I'll call you. Like, yo, look, Jordan was talking bad on your name.
No.
I mean, Ian, just so you know, before we started recording,
no. Ian and Louis, it's the Drakes want versus match.
Yeah.
Right now.
We'll host.
Dude, actually, that would be kind of cool.
That'd be really funny. I'd laugh.
But yeah, well, thank you so much, Jordan, for sitting down and talking about this with us. I mean, obviously, like we're friends, we hang out all the time, we do the channel together, so there is that element to it. But I also know that like you're not always comfortable being, the one on the camera, and so I do really, really appreciate you sitting down and being willing to talk with us about a really amazing achievement that you've pulled off.
Yeah, I appreciate it, guys. And yeah, I'm not, camera's not super my thing. And I've literally only been on the channel one time. It was just my hands and my voice, unfortunately, which is terrible to edit yourself. But anyway, yeah, I mean, just super appreciative of, everything you guys have done for me as well. And it's, it's great working with you guys.
Yeah. It's going to be super funny when, like, all the comments now on our channel is going to be, where's Jordan?
Where's Jordan?
Jordan,
he's behind the camera. He's making us look pretty.
Yeah.
Like
Let him play.
Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine I'll have to be on some stuff
We're gonna
more
probably
often.
get you on a game or two fairly soon.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know.
But,
No more behind the camera for me.
Yeah. Get him out of there.
But in the meantime, Jordan, is there anything you want to say to our lovely audience? Anything you want to plug? Anything you want to share?
Yeah, obviously would love for you guys to subscribe to the Idiot Brewing Company. Do it with my two best buddies here and Chris, who couldn't be here tonight. But we brew up some funny decks. We do some really cool gameplay, and we've got a cool segment that we're going to be releasing in the next couple weeks that we've been working on, and we're pretty excited for. So, obviously we'd love to have everyone join there. And then I have I've been getting pinged on it for one. And so would like to offer CEDH coaching for anyone who's interested. Just DM me on Discord. My name is Steel Dragon there, or you can hit me up on Twitter. Also, my handle's just Steel Dragon. So, if you're interested in what the meta does and how you can respond to it, I do offer those services. I'm also looking at maybe doing like some gameplay coaching. But we'll kind of see how it unfolds. Coaching is going to be a little bit new to me, but I have been asked more than I expected to after the boil. So if you're looking for that, feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Yeah. And we will make sure to have all the links to the various things, whether it be your Discord, I guess it's not a link for your Discord, but for our Discord,
Yep.
the Idiot Brewing Company Discord. We'll probably throw your Twitter in there to make sure people can find you on Twitter. as well as, of course, putting your deck list
Yep.
in the description so that people can have a direct access to that, see what it is that you were playing or are playing. But until then, I believe that's all we have for tonight.
Ooh, one last thought. One last thought. I'm trying to get 16 people for an experimental league. Somebody who's watching this and is joining our Discord. I will find 16 people to join me on this crazy journey.
I think you're going to find at least 32.
Maybe we might get more, but I only want 16 for the first season because this might go horribly awry. But if you want to be part of an experimental Magic league that is very akin to fantasy football, hit me up in the Discord and we'll get you in there. And hopefully we have 16, then we can finally kick this thing off and figure out. If we've been doing it locally,
It is very fun.
It's
really great.
That is talk about a Jordan Drake original. That is definitely
yes,
a wholesale original idea that I'm very happy with the way it's turned out.
Yeah.
So yeah, do that because we want to do that.
Yep. Yeah, been very successful in the local area, but we've only done it locally. We want to take it online and see if the concept works online. Other thing is, if you're in the North Carolina area, we're going to be hosting a bronze-a-thon in the Greensboro area. So if you happen to be in the area, we're going to be doing that in December. Details will be forthcoming, but we will be doing an all-day bronze-a-thon, just running as many bronze events as possible so that players can get as many points and you guys can, jump up in the championship series as well.
Yeah, absolutely. For that one, we'll probably once we know more details, we will be making announcements in our videos, as well as posting them on our socials. Just keep an eye out for all that good stuff. And just in general, in terms of local stuff, come play Magic with us. If you're in the North Carolina area, I mean, we're in the Greensboro area. You can find us at the Comic Dimension. They've been very supportive of us, especially with with our local league. In terms of streaming and hosting us, so
Yeah, and at the Discord we're always on, whether or not it's one of us or whoever.
You can always,
Yeah.
We're always just kind of hanging out. Even if we're not showing online, I'm sure as soon as you throw a message, one of us will be around.
Yeah. I will dust off Rockside if you guys need me to.
Moths and
the old ancient text.
You're not going to join me in TNT?
No, I will. Yeah, but I don't want
also-
to. Yeah. Well, double TNT pod sounds.
I did it all weekend, bro.
Yeah,
All weekend.
Yeah. That sounds rough. Almost as rough as a double crick pod. I think I need chaos.
I'm just gonna hang out with my Ashley and I'm gonna do 2 damage to everything.
Oh God, no.
Including your face, TK. Your
No.
adnos is offline.
No, my Paradise Mantle Brock. That's the one colored source of mana I got. Yeah.
All right, folks. Well, we'll go ahead and pack it up here. We'll go ahead and let our fine audience on their way. But I've been July. That has been TK. This has been Jordan. Say bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, audience. Wait, should I say everyone?
I don't know.
Bye, everyone.